I'll share with you that my first 3 lines say breathe, ground, and open your heart. It's not often I can share that, what's in the sidelines of my speech. I'm in good company. Thank you, President Leaf, Naropa Board of Trustees, faculty, parents, and of course, esteemed graduates. Welcome. While I'm not an official student of Naropa University, I'm certain that its legacy has made its way to me through the many teachers and teachings I've been blessed with throughout my life. And in a time when we are not just fighting for human rights, but we are fighting to be human again, Naropa's whole person approach to leadership and growth is exactly what this country needs to find its way home. So I am privileged and honored to be here with you today. When President Leaf asked me to speak, I was taken aback, to be honest. To follow in the footsteps of Pema Chodron, Parker Palmer, Brenda Salgado is beyond my wildest dreams. And so I came up with all sorts of reasons why I shouldn't. From I don't meditate enough, to I'm too type A, to I'm not academic-ish. I don't know what that even means. To I'm not ready, to I'm not worthy. I know these voices well. But when I really sat with my hesitation, what I realized is that I was just scared. And then I remembered a thing that we say in our CTZNWELL community when we find ourselves carefully navigating risk or avoiding failure. We say to one another, we don't have time for self-doubt. And so I responded with an enthusiastic yes. But I still didn't know what a commencement was. So I did the thing I always do when I don't know. I grabbed a dictionary. And what I found was unexpected. Commencement isn't about completion or closure. Commencement means to begin. It's a turning point. And I thought, I can speak to that. I've walked the path of learning and failing and starting over and beginning again. And I know what it is to face the great and vast uncertainty that lies before us. So we can share in that today. I want to give a special shout out to all the mothers who are here. As President Leaf mentioned, my mom is also here with me as well. And I just figured this out this morning. Exactly 20 years ago to the day I graduated from college. I can't believe that much time has passed. But I want to acknowledge my mom, not just for allowing me to be who I am today, but also the many messy versions of myself I had to move through to become who I am. I'm sure all the parents in this audience can relate to that. You see, my mom and my stepdad raised me to believe that I could be anything I wanted, which I took to mean I could be everything. And not just that, I had to be the best at everything. So I grew up a first-class overachiever, vice president of my class, captain of the lacrosse team, honor society, drama club, you name it, I did it. And it worked for me. I got rewarded with all sorts of things, good grades, trophies, articles in the local paper, attention. All of it affirmed and validated my perfectionism. I called it my inner winner. So it's no surprise that my high achiever student grew up to be a high performer corporate executive. And by 25, I had designed what I thought was the perfect life, the dream job, the husband, the big SUV, the apartment in the city, the house by the sea. It was the American dream as I had learned it. And this one Tuesday began like any other day. I woke up early, clocked 3 miles at the gym, sprinted down Madison Avenue in heels, grabbed my venti soy quad latte, not kidding, and was grinding at my desk by 7:30 a.m. I was head down at my computer when the first plane hit. And it wasn't until my coworker shook me out of my stupor to tell me that a second plane had hit the World Trade Center that I knew in a way that I couldn't explain that my life was about to change. My stepdad actually wasn't supposed to be working that day. He had switched shifts last minute so that he could come to my 1-year wedding anniversary that night. He was one of the first firemen to respond to the call, and without a moment's hesitation, ran into the building, climbed 78 flights of stairs, broke right into the floor of impact, and stepped into the fire. We know this because we recovered his radio transmissions detailing his final moments in the tower. He was last heard calling out to his men at 9:57 a.m., just 2 minutes before the second tower came down. He said, "I'll be right to you." That moment altered every sense I had of the world. And as we moved from he is missing to he is gone, from we must find his body to we must find who is responsible, it wasn't anything I was prepared for. At first, I responded by doing the thing I always do, take charge. It's what I had learned. When things feel out of control, control them. But there was no fixing this problem. And so I was forced to let go of everything I thought I knew. And that's when yoga and meditation came into my life. Instead of fixing and controlling, I started to let myself feel. The yoga mat was more like a wrestling mat, the place where I faced my pain and my fear and my loss. And it was messy, but something was happening to me. And the more I breathed and moved through it, the more my grief changed. The practice wasn't just healing me, it was revealing me, this new version of me. So much so that I quit my job, moved across the country, became a yoga teacher, and vowed to change the world. I arrived in San Francisco just as the wellness trend was taking off. And on any given day, you could either find me at the yoga studio, the Whole Foods, or the Lululemon. It really felt like something magical was happening in the community. People were waking up, eating organic, buying green everything, piling into yoga studios like it was church. We were hungry for meaning and connection and hope, and I was obsessed. I would hit my mat, stock organic food, seek exotic retreats like my life depended on it. And when I would step out of my yoga studio on Folsom and 4th, I would walk right into the same group of homeless men who took shelter in that stairwell every evening. At first, I would plow by, and then I would look, and then I would stop. And then I realized that something wasn't right. The world outside my wellness bubble was different, really different. Every day, families struggling to survive, children going to school hungry, guns ripping apart entire communities, people losing their homes to the mortgage crisis, Americans denied basic human rights based on the color of their skin or their religion or their sexual orientation. Non-stop policing, incarcerating, deporting, and bombing. This was the real world. I realized that the practice wasn't just revealing me, it was revealing the world to me in living color. And no matter how much I tried to meditate it away, I couldn't unsee the suffering all around me. I used to think it was enough to have good intentions, to be a kind and compassionate citizen. But I started to wonder if that was just a myth that enabled me to escape. So I began to grapple with why I got to be well when others didn't. How well-being had somehow become a privilege afforded to people with access and time and money, people like me. Because while wellness soars, so does inequality. Inequality has been a staple of the so-called American dream for as long as we've had one. And a recent study found the US to be both the wealthiest and the most unequal country amongst developed nations. Whether we're looking at child poverty rates or the school-to-prison pipeline or the diabetes epidemic, we, the big we with a capital W, aren't well by any indication. The truth is, well-being for some is well-being for none. And what we're left with is what we call the well-being gap, the unequal conditions that determine who gets to be well and who doesn't. I was on the lucky side of that equation after 9/11, but not everyone was. I met Valerie Kerr in early 2016, and it was one of those instantaneous divine encounters where you feel like you've known this person your whole life. But it wasn't until I heard her story that I realized that mine was about to change. On September 15th, 2001, 4 days after 9/11, Valerie's uncle, Balbir Sodi, was killed in a hate crime at the gas station that he owned in Phoenix. He had been planting flowers out front to honor those who had been lost just days earlier. He wore a turban and a beard in accordance with his Sikh faith and was shot 5 times by a man who claimed to act in the name of patriotism. I thought 9/11 was the worst of it, the most unimaginable and devastating loss. But it was just the beginning for Balbir and so many Sikh and Muslim Americans. Since that day, we've given into a culture of retaliation that has enabled policies of discrimination, surveillance, incarceration, and even death. We have witnessed, even allowed, the harassment of fellow American citizens based on the color of their skin or their religion. And as if losing 2,996 civilians on 9/11 wasn't enough, it is estimated that over 1.3 million people around the world have been killed in the war on terror. Some might say that is the cost of our freedom. But I wonder if that is the price of our fear. Every year on 9/11, we gather together and we vow to never forget. But are we really remembering when we don't tell the whole story? The one that includes the suffering of so many who had been persecuted since that day. And am I truly honoring the memory of the man who raised me, who demonstrated a love for his neighbors every day of his life? He didn't discriminate between who gets to be saved and who doesn't. He ran into that building for all of us. And so Valerie and I, we listened to each other's stories, 2 heartbreaking versions of the same event, and eventually our stories became one, woven together in such a way that they could no longer be separate. And 15 years after 9/11, we came together at Ground Zero, the place where it all began. But this time we brought the story of Balbir Sodi and the beloved community that has been lost since 9/11. And 4 days later, we traveled across the country to a temple at a gas station that has been known as the second Ground Zero. And we brought with us the story of my stepdad, Lieutenant Joseph G. Levy, and all of the courageous first responders who gave their lives on 9/11. We stood in solidarity, side by side, hand in hand, hearts on the line, And while it was our suffering that united us, it was our relationship that transformed us. And this is when my practice took on a whole new meaning. No longer was it the thing I kept to myself in isolation or self-preservation. It was as if it was unleashed in relationship, a capacity for transformation that I never thought possible. And this is when I came to understand that my practice was inherently political. And I know this is not new. This is ancient. The truth of interdependence has roots in almost every religion, Eastern and Western. And it is calling us up to go beyond personal responsibility and self-interest towards the messy, complex, and intersectional reality of who we really are in America and how we came to be here. It means recognizing that many of us, those with unearned privilege, have benefited from the legacy of colonialism, racism, and free market economics. And we can't truly know healing and reconciliation within ourselves until we face the wounds that we have inherited, that we are a part of. And I know that it's hard and uncomfortable and inconvenient, but it is also powerful. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke of this when he said, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience. It's where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." What may feel in this country like a moment of crisis and division is also a moment of healing and solidarity. Not unlike the policies of truth and reconciliation, we have an opportunity to reclaim our whole selves, our whole history, and our whole community in order to transcend and transform. It's not solidarity for the sake of others. It's solidarity for the sake of all of us. It's mutual, and it's happening already. We see it reflected in the Black Lives Matter movement that knows that our liberation is bound. And the Fight for 15 campaign, which is uniting around a vision of economic justice where everyone gets to thrive. And the dreamers who believe that belonging is fundamental regardless of what documents you may have. Jim Wallace says, "It's not about going more to the left or to the right. It's about going deeper. It's about centering values in our personal lives and recovering morality in the public system. There is no not political when it comes to taking care of each other. And our responsibility to one another is not just a social pact, it's a spiritual pact." So what if we reframed politics as a system through which we take care of one another and the whole of society? Then citizenship would be the practice of how we take care of each other. Peter Block defines citizen as one who is willing to be accountable for and committed to the well-being of the whole. Well-being is only really possible with the full participation and realization of all of its parts. And to do that, we need to dismantle the beliefs and the systems that are holding us back and build a new inclusive ecology that transforms our society from the inside out. And here's what it's going to take. We need to show up. We, the people, are the heart of this ecology, and what we believe about ourselves and one another matters. Together, we must reclaim our power as citizens and rebuild a capacity to be the active creators and stewards of our communities. From there, we need to rebuild the structures that support and sustain our people. A body politic that originates in churches and living rooms, yoga studios and community centers, radical institutions like Naropa University, where these places become the starting point for change, and unite to become a movement of collective care. And we need courageous action in how we come together to actively disrupt systems of injustice and protect all life on Earth. It looks like peaceful protest, organized boycotts, collective advocacy, and it looks like shared practice, community rituals, spoken word, and music. It is however we rally to animate and defend our morality for the sake of the whole. This is the real moral majority. One that centers love, justice, and the idea that no one is well unless everyone is well. It is interfaith, intersectional, interdependent, inter-everything. It is all of us putting humanity over conformity and love over hate. And it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to understand that our diversity and wholeness make us stronger. And here's the thing. We don't even need a majority. From Satyagraha to the Civil Rights Movement to Occupy Wall Street to Moral Mondays, history has taught us that we have the power to transform a nation. According to Erica Chenoweth's research, it only takes 3.5% of a population to be actively engaged in nonviolent resistance to bring about a revolution. That is only 11 million people in America. And just to give you some perspective, there are currently over 11 million people meditating, over 37 million people practicing yoga, and over 50 million people engaged in lifestyles of health and sustainability in this country. We have the potential to be a political force for good, and that is exactly what we can and should do. Margaret Mead said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has." From our ancestors who fought for our freedom and civil rights, to the first responders who gave their lives on 9/11, we stand on the shoulders of great men and women, and we are among them in this room right now. We are the warriors. And we need to trust ourselves and one another. Faith doesn't deliver certainty. It doesn't promise completion or closure. It simply invites us to open ourselves and ask the question, how can I best serve? So this is it. This is the moment of truth, the call to action. And I wish that I could guarantee some positive prediction for our future. But the thing is, we are living in extraordinary times. And it would be irresponsible for me to say that it's going to be okay, because I don't know. But I remember in the immediate aftermath of 9/11, just before the dust had settled, before we got afraid, there was this opening. And in that space, there was no certainty, no safety, no handbook for how to respond. There was just us. All of us stunned, heartbroken, and awake. And we did the only thing we knew to do. We turned towards one another. We gave blood. We made casseroles. We planted flowers. We showed up. Rebecca Solnit spoke of the profound power of these moments when she said, "An emergency is separation from the familiar, a sudden emergence into a new atmosphere, one that often demands that we ourselves rise to the occasion." This is most certainly an emergency, and we are rising to the occasion. It's not the kind of patriotism that puts love for our country above love for one another. It's a citizenship of humanity, because that is exactly what is at stake here, our humanity. And so this is the moment that you all have been training for. And so now you get to let it all go, because you are ready already. And don't look forward for what's possible. Look around you. I mean it. Like, look around right now. Look around at who's with you, who's by your side, who's got your back. Look around at who we are and who we are to one another. Because we don't have time for self-doubt or hesitation. We only have each other and this very auspicious moment that is the beginning and end of everything. And so be weird. And be awkward. And be creative and be radical with your life. And do it scared. Participate relentlessly in creating the future that we all deserve, because how we practice and show up in this particular moment and from here on forward is going to determine who we are as a community and as a country. Thank you.